It's the 3rd of June, and already, despite looking like it's going to be a clear run, we know what's happening, we know who the main target is. One of the other transfer targets throws a spanner in the works with a very interesting interview. This is today's Arsenal Transfer Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in and making this a part of your morning routines. It is greatly appreciated. I hope you've had a fantastic weekend. Start to your week, of course, as well. On Monday, it is Tuesday. We're counting down the days to pre-season. It's only just over a month away, believe it or not. But yeah, it's a long way to go still. A lot still to happen. And a lot of transfer windows still to discuss and to go through. Good morning to those joining us in the chat box. Mark, Hooded Gooner, Knowledge, Christopher, Rich, Wilson, Aidan, Matt G. We got Pat, we got Grantley, Poos, and Mike and Colin. We got Claire, Kim, Jamil, Colton, Amesy, Roy, Barry, Brian, Martin, Tom, Brad, Blackshine, Rob, and other Tom, and Darbas and Aaron, PJ. We got Afsar and Olawale. We've got Mohammed and Shari and Mike. We got Richard and Mark, we've got Spearman and Norris and Errol, we've got Paul and Graham, we've got Anns, we've got Carrie Ann. I'm really going off it today, trying to say as many as I can, but so many of you in the chat box, thank you so much as always for listening. It is greatly appreciated, even those that don't like me reading out the list. Do you remember that time a while ago where we had that iTunes review and this guy just left that, I assume it was a guy, it's probably bad of me. I assume it's a guy, left this message like, spends 10 minutes talking about transfers, answers questions from the chat box, but spends most of the show reading out random names that have no bearing on my life. Do you remember that? Goodness me, there's some miserable people in this world, isn't there? But good morning to all of you. Please do make sure you drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. If you are new around here, those notifications turned on. If you would like to leave a nice review, maybe not moaning about the fact I read people's names out, then you can do that, of course, as well. You can leave us a 5-star review on Spotify, and you can leave us a written review on iTunes, of course, as well. You can leave comments on Spotify now, I found out. I don't know if I like that idea. I don't know if I like the idea that you can now leave comments on Spotify. I felt like Spotify was sometimes a nice escape from the fact that you couldn't have comments. But I will say that it was a very nice comment left on yesterday's show from Oni Mahmed, who says, listen to the show almost every day, gets me through the work morning, keep up the good work. So that was nice. I definitely appreciate that. So thank you to those that are leaving kind messages over there. I can moderate them, but my access to the Spotify stuff is always weird because obviously we are part of the TalkSport fan network. So it's a little more challenging, but I'm sure I can have a look into it. Anyway, right, let's jump to today's stories, shall we? And looking into Arsenal's transfer straight away, and looking specifically at one of the more obscure links over the last couple of weeks or so. According to Alan Nixon, Arsenal are said to be closing in on 17-year-old Blackburn striker Igor Tyjon. He is eligible for Poland. I can't say I know too much about the player whatsoever. Came through Blackburn's youth academy. Has played for both England and Poland's under 17s and 16s. Well, specifically only England's under 17s. He's broken into the senior team at Blackburn this season. He's made a couple of appearances for the senior side despite being only 17. And is drawing plenty of interest, it seems, from Arsenal. But not much is known about him. I can't give you any really information. He scored 4 goals in 7 PL2 games this campaign. But it's something that Arsenal are interested in, scouted clearly, and could be looking to add. There he is. There's the striker. That he is the guy. No Gyokeres, no Sesko. 17-year-old Igor Tyjon is going to be the guy. So you can all stop moaning now. You can all stop complaining. We are going to sign 2 strikers. I'm sure everyone's going to be fine with that, right? I'm sure they're going to be fine with that. I joke. Moving forwards, though, to another youngster and a player that we were being asked about in the chat box just the other day. Sverre Nypan, the Norwegian international midfielder, a player that has been linked to Arsenal since January. We know that Girona were a team very interested in him during that January window as well. We know that Aston Villa were also said to be very keen on the player. However, Norwegian media are claiming that both Arsenal and Manchester City are again alive in the race for the player. So rather interesting that we found ourselves in this position now as a player again is being linked that wasn't before. But Villa have apparently pulled out of the race. Maybe that's to do with the fact they're no longer in Champions League action next season. But Arsenal are said to be again keen on the player. So this is going to be one to watch, it seems, over the course of the next couple of months and hopefully less than that. But he is a young midfielder who could indeed join Arsenal this summer and has been linked with the club for a hell of a long time. Very highly rated midfielder indeed. And it's always been thought that if Arsenal landed him, it would be considered quite the coup to land a player of this kind of potential from Norway. But let's wait and see. And we'll cover this story, of course, as it develops. Moving forwards, though, and to the headline act of today's little short episode in terms of news, not loads dropped in the last 24 hours, but a very interesting story, this one, because Viktor Gyokeres has been speaking with former teammate Leo Østigård on FaceTime on a podcast that they do called the Fly Modus podcast. Can't say I know what the reference is, but that's where he was speaking, and it was rung by Østigård, and the host of this podcast basically was talking to him and saying, things like, I know you can't say much about it, but Victor, where are you going this summer? Where are you going to end up this summer going in the transfer window? Can you give us a hint? Is it Arsenal? And which are the alternatives as well? And Victor said, no, we will see. Nobody knows anything yet. I wish I had more fun answers, but that's all I can say for now. But then it kind of fast forwarded to the end of the show where they were saying goodbye to Viktor Gyokeres, and Østigård was like, great talking to you. See you soon, and text me when it's all done and everything's signed and sorted with Arsenal. And Gyokeres was like, yeah, sure. Now, obviously, I don't think you can really read too much into this, but it's a very weird kind of moment. You don't tend to see these types of things happen in the transfer window. Players actually on a podcast whatsoever and speaking about a move or being asked about a move. Yes, it's all very cheeky. Yes, it's all very light-hearted. But I think they tried to catch him out. They got the headlines, that's for sure, at the end when he was said about, yeah, sure, I think it's all sarcasm, really. It's obviously like, we know that Viktor Gyokeres is a player that Arsenal hold interest in. We know that he's a player that has been in talks with Arsenal, and Andrea Berta has spoken to the players' side, I think, and certainly will be across the board on what's going on with Sporting, the club as well. But Benjamin Sesko does, it seems, appear the one that they are leaning towards, but they have not closed the door on Viktor Gyokeres at this point, as far as I'm aware, at least. But yes, this is a very it's a very amusing piece of transfer news, and probably the most kind of like silly season type of story that we have seen up until this point, which is just a FaceTime call. Viktor Gyokeres talking about a potential move in the summer, and also being asked directly about Arsenal. But amusing, but I don't think very telling. I'll be very honest with you. I don't think it's very telling whatsoever. Right, we're going to go to part 2 now. Your questions and more right after this. Right, this is part 2 of today's show, where we can jumping into the chat box and tackling some of your questions. So now, if you've got some questions that you would like, of course, to be answered, now is the time to do that. I'll try my best to answer them. I had a brilliant comment in yesterday's show that I wanted to find. Where is it? From yesterday. It was like the most accurate comment. It's very short. It's very sweet. From @thegazman81. Tom, I've heard nothing Canton is the nickname. I mean, to be fair, That's probably fair at this point in time. Because rather than sitting here and lying to you all that I know X, Y, and Z, if I've heard someone ask me about something, if I know something, I'll tell you. Most of the time, most of the talk in the transfer window is a load of bollocks. It's a load of rubbish. And I've not heard anything. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be in the know about something that I'm not in the know about. There's some things I can give you info on. You know, the stories around Sesko, the stories around Gyokeres, the fact Arsenal are kind of leaning slightly towards Sesko at the moment, that Andrea Berta is taking a very holistic approach to the transfer window and being in talks with a number of targets. But if I don't know anything, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to pretend I know anything about it, because if I don't, I don't. You know, there's no credibility there. I don't particularly love the transfer window and reporting on transfers. It's a thankless task. So I think you'd much rather that I told you the truth than just try to bollocks your way into thinking we know more here than we do. Let's jump, though, shall we, into some of your questions. Raz says, hi, Tom. Realistically, how many wingers actually improve our ceiling? For me, Rodrigo and Barcola seem to be the only ones, but both seem unlikely. They do seem unlikely, very unlikely, to be fair. How many wide players do raise the needle, push the needle? How many do that? Well, I think Jamie Gittins would definitely do so. I think that, but he seems to be in talks with Chelsea over a potential move. I do think Nico Williams, were he to stay fit, would also push the needle. But the problem is his injury situations are continuingly pretty poor. It would probably be fair to point out at this point as well. I think that when it comes to the wide area, there are more options, but there are less guarantees over kind of with Rodrigo and Barcola aside, of getting that kind of push. But let us know in the chat box if you think there are some that you genuinely think are much better than Martinelli and Trossard that you think Arsenal could add to the team this summer. Let's scroll up a little bit more. Lynn joins us, says, I still think that if Berta wants Victor, why hasn't he been signed? And do you feel that Berta is a little slow out of the block? Certainly not. No, he's in talks with a lot of different profiles at the moment, Lynn. We're only June 3rd right now. Arsenal will be hoping to get business done in this month and hoping to bring in players before, of course, pre-season. That's kind of the target. You know, the period which we would describe as what I would describe as, early in the window is if a player comes in before pre-season begins. That's what I'm looking at. That's where I'm at, is when a player arrives before pre-season starts. That period would be described as doing your business early. That's what I think would be described as early business. If you are bringing in players after the window, after the preseason, like last summer, we weren't early in our business. Calafiori came in pretty much as the tour was finishing. Marino came in well after the tour had finished and wasn't able to play in any preseason games. Those were and Neto and Sterling. Arsenal did not do their business early last year. Arsenal should be looking to do their business early this year. And also you have to remember that there is the whole July financial books trying to make sure that players' deals are done on certain financial years. That is also really, really important. John says, not a question, more to give you respect for keeping calm and being an ever-present voice of reason in this social media world of madness. Too much waffle and emotion, but you remain honest, intelligent, and sensible. Thank you, John. Incredibly patronizing, but done in a beautiful way. So thank you. Kirill, thank you so much for your kind donation, mate. I really appreciate that. That will go on a pint, I'm sure, in Canada at some point. Leaving plenty of comments and plenty of support, of course, every single day in the chat box as well. So thank you so much, Kirill, for your kind donation, of course. And just looking for the next comment after that. Said, it's the first time I've done this. I forgot to send a message. You deserve it, Tom. I hope that we can get Sesko and Eze and keep Kivior as well. I think Kivior would be an excellent decision to be kept at Arsenal. He's been really, really good. And says, Tom, I was watching Harry's podcast yesterday and he said at this moment, Sesko is not better than Kai. However, did say he will be a great striker in the future. I think that personally, Sesko is slightly better than Kai is as a centre forward. I think we've talked about this before. I think that neither of Gyokeres or Sesko are significant upgrades on Kai, but I do think they offer something better. They offer something different in a number of traits. Kai is a versatile player who can play in multiple areas, but Sesko is an out-and-out number 9. Which also gives you that extra added benefit and specificity about his game. So I'd slightly disagree with Harry. I think that they are slightly better than Havertz. I just don't think they are significantly better. than Havertz. That's kind of where I'm at on that front. Right, says, thanks, Tom. My intention isn't to make excuses, but looking at what's available, this window is more about raising our floor than our ceiling. I think that you can do both in this window. And I think you can do both of them really well. And I think we need to do both. You know, those links to Leroy Sané have concerned me. I really hope Arsenal don't go for Leroy Sané during this window. And if they are, it's only can it be agreed to be done is if indeed they manage to do this deal on top of other deals, another wide player, another forward, another creative midfielder. Adding Sane should be a cherry on top of the cake, not part of the cake, if that makes sense. Let's go to Tyson, who says, with the season over and most players on holiday or on international duty before the holidays, I'm not expecting announcements till either near the end of the first window or the second week of the next window. What do you think? Of course, holidays can be cut short. Players do cut their holidays short. They do interrupt their breaks to complete transfers, do medicals, sign papers. It's very, technologically advanced these days, transfers. It's not fax machines anymore. So that can happen. But it definitely can still slow things down. But deals can still be done while they are on holiday. Ryan says, Tom, do you think Berta is prioritising renewals of Gabriel, Saka, Partey, and that can lead to delays in making new signings? No, I think he's across all of it, Ryan. I think he's getting to work across all fronts and has people that will help across it. It's not just him. There are other people involved in these things. You've got people behind the scenes that are well beyond just Andrea Berta doing business. So, no, I don't think it's a case of prioritising one over the other. I think there is, as I said before, a holistic approach to how Arsenal are tackling this window. Nike says, we want our striker to do a lot of pressing and guiding to play the way Arsenal want. Who is better at this, Sesko or Gyokeres? I feel that Sesko is the better presser of the two, certainly, but and fits the system a lot more. So that's kind of where I'm at on that side of things. Henke Ho says, last season Arsenal went with 2 loans in the last week of the window. Do you see Arsenal getting any player in on loan, or is that a last option? I think you've probably summed it up pretty well. I think it's more likely to be a last option if indeed Arsenal can't get the players in that they want. They may have to go into the loan market, but at the moment, that's not something really on the radar at all. Someone says, what do you think of Igor Paxal? Plays like Douglas Costa when he was at Shakhtar. I would be lying to you, mate, if I had any idea really about the Brazilian. I haven't watched him. I don't know too much about him. He's currently playing for Feyenoord in the Eredivisie this season. He's managed to end the campaign with 16 goals in 34 games, 18 goals across 47 appearances. There is obviously something to be said about, I think about Sinisterra. Sinisterra had a brilliant record playing for Feyenoord in the Eredivisie. He scored plenty of goals, 23 in 49 games across all comps, and added plenty of assists to his name as well. Moved to Leeds, didn't translate that, as now at Bournemouth hasn't translated that either. So I know it's different players, but the Portuguese league, the Eredivisie, particularly for forwards, there's always a little bit of a concern. Not less so with the Netherlands, because we have seen players successfully translate, their abilities. Specifically, defenders and midfielders have done quite well, but there is always that little bit of a concern when it comes to those leagues and those players moving and the success rate of those players as well. I think you probably, at this stage where Arsenal are at, go for somebody who's a lot more guaranteed to give you immediate impact. Henke Ho says, when does the preseason start for Arsenal? The clubs in the Club World Cup must start at preseason much earlier. Arsenal will be leaving on the 19th of July. They'll be playing their first game, I think, on the 23rd against AC Milan, and they'll be returning just over a week later, having played Newcastle and Spurs in Singapore and Hong Kong. Ruben says, Tom, you've said for a while that this would be a big window for all clubs. Got to ask, how do you know? Just from what you hear, Ruben, really, just speaking to people within the game, speaking to sources, speaking to some contacts. Certainly from an Arsenal point of view, it's expected to be that. Liverpool, of course, didn't spend really anything last window, so had a lot of room to spend. Chelsea were always expected to go again because they were in the Club World Cup. Man City as well, but both in the Club World Cups. They were always looking to do business early. It's just through contacts, it's just speaking to things. When you get into this job, you build up a network of different people to speak to on those fronts, text people about different things and get insights. Sometimes you can get insights, sometimes you can't. That's just the way the world works in this biz. Mark says, can you update us on Zubimendi's status? Rumours of Arsenal interest in Eze, any move on Xavi Simons, and Partey re-signing. On Zubimendi, still expect that deal to go through. It may be that is one that obviously goes on the July books. That could be beneficial for either club, so just bear that in mind. Eze, yes, the interest in Eze is real. That is a real thing. Arsenal are interested in Eze, as they are interested in a lot of players. Xavi Simons, I haven't heard anything, so you can add that up to the number of things I've not heard about, but I've not heard anything to suggest that Arsenal are interested in Xavi Simons this summer, at the moment at least. Partey, obviously there's a lot of rumours about Barcelona. You know, as of last week, the last thing I heard was that things were moving quite positively with Arsenal and a new contract for Partey. They want to keep him. Arteta wants to keep him. And if he does leave, they are going to, I think they'd find it a challenge to replace Partey. But Carlos Baleba stands out for me as one that I would be interested in potentially going for. But I know some other people in the comment section yesterday suggested a few other names that Arsenal could go for as well. Sirkin says, I think that Harry makes the same mistake everyone else does in thinking Gyokeres is massively better. Havertz, Sesko, and Gyokeres are all very similar level, just different styles and offering different attributes. I wouldn't stray too far from that view, Sirkin. I think that's probably fair. They're all kind of on a similar plane to one another and have different abilities and traits and characteristics. Claire says, I saw a video yesterday about Premier League clubs' revenue and saw that Luton made more money in the Premier League than Ajax did. Premier League money is crazy. It is. It's absolutely mental. You know, when you look at the Europa League clubs next season, Aston Villa have double the squad value of the nearest non-Premier League participant. They should be absolutely walking that competition next season. Crystal Palace have a squad value of around 100 million euros more than the nearest European competitor. Both of Villa and Palace should be favourites for the Europa League next season. That's just the reality of that competition these days. Anthony says, if we agree Sesko fits the system better, which I do too, then shouldn't we stop with this Sesko as a project and Gyokeres is for now? If Sesko fits us better, surely he's better for now. That's what I've been trying to say, Anthony. Sesko is not a project signing. And if he is, then so is Gyokeres. That's the point, is that you can't say that one is over the other. You can't just look at the guy's age and say, oh, well, he's 21, 22, so he's got a lot of development to do, so he's a project player. That's not the way to look at Sesko. The way to look at Sesko is Sesko is already putting in very, very impressive numbers. He's outperforming his XG more so than Gyokeres is. He's outperforming his XG better than Isak was at the same age for Sociedad. And he's already doing that in the Bundesliga for a club that don't create a lot of chances for their players this season at all. So for that reason, he is not a project if the others aren't either. If you want to call him a project, you have to say the others are too, because any player really has got development and transition and adaptation to make when they move to a new club. Mike says, would you sell Kai to be able to get Sesko and Gyokeres? No, I wouldn't. I think that Havertz is incredibly valuable to Arsenal for playing in multiple positions. And while if you had Sesko and you had Gyokeres, you'd be limiting yourself to playing one or the other because they are centre forwards. I know that some people recently have been talking about when Gyokeres played as a left winger. This was, by the way, like 5 years ago when he was playing not for Sporting. In fact, I can tell you the last time he played as a left winger. Looking at all competitions, the last time he played as a left winger was 2020 for St. Pauli. Was the last time Viktor Gyokeres played as a left winger. His numbers as a left winger are not particularly great compared to what they are, of course, playing as a centre forward. It's about half that. He's contributing about half the rate he does as a wide player compared to a centre forward. And has only done it really in kind of youth competitions or other cup competitions for Brighton at times, a few times for St. Pauli, and other times playing in Sweden as well when he was very young. So it's just not a position he plays and hasn't done for about 5 years. Sean says Sesko is a project because everybody unanimously agrees that he will reach his potential in about 2 to 3 years. So how isn't that a project? Because if you're saying he isn't a project, then you have to say that the others aren't. Every single player is a project. Every player is going to improve gradually if they arrive at Arsenal as a key figure. So he's a project in some senses, sure. But the idea that this whole project thing gets used as something of a stick to beat the signing with, as in he's not going to give you immediate impact. He is going to give you immediate impact. The signing isn't delivered to us as a project. The signing is done to give Arsenal a player who can be a starter for us now and improve into something even greater further down the line as well. That is the point of a deal for Benjamin Sesko. A project signing, to me, people use a lot as somebody who comes in like barely plays whatsoever, and comes in now and again off the bench and gradually works their way in. Sorry, there's a loser in the chat. Mark says, if Partey does not re-sign, would you think about picking up Doucouré on a free? Everton released him, and if he's a depth backup, might he serve the number 6 role as well? I don't think so. He's not really a 6. He's more of a box-to-box midfielder. I wouldn't play him in that role, and I wouldn't have confidence starting him in that role either. Lee says, Tom, I can't understand why you won't be doing a transfer show next week. You will only need to stay up until 3 a.m. Canada time to be on an 8 a.m. show. I think you've answered the question for yourself, mate. Orange Juice says, how do you always manage to look up all these stats and stuff so fast mid-chat? Do you have tabs open and ready, or do you just type insanely fast? Well, I do write for a living, so I have got used to typing pretty quickly, yeah. But I do usually just look them up as quick as I can while I'm talking. John says, hi, Tom. Could you see Arsenal moving for another out-and-out striker as backup to Sesko, who would be even a lone player or a low-risk player? No, I can't, John. I think it would be one centre-forward coming in. Lawrence says, immediate impact off the bench with Kai starting, probably. I mean, gradually, yeah, I imagine that he could start with Kai, and then Sesko would adapt and move into the team over the course of this season. Equally, if they spend 80 odd million on a centre forward, are they really going to be minded to sit him on the bench for the majority of games? I don't think so. Don says, Tom, the fans who complained we didn't sign Isak before he signed for Newcastle with 9 goals in La Liga say they don't want Sesko and then will moan about Berta in 2 years if he scores 20 plus goals in the future. Oh, I know. I'm very aware. Isak says, same. Some other clubs come behind us and sign players. What is the problem with our club? It takes too long for us to sign. Every week you hear about Sesko and Gyokeres. What about other positions? It's almost as if people think that they're just sitting on their hands. I really don't get this. I think that you are absolutely spoilt when it comes to the amount of information you have access to these days. I think fans are spoiled when it comes to how much they have access to during this period of time. Because the reality is, at this point, that 20 years ago, you'd learn about transfers, maybe not 20, but 25 years ago, you'd be learning about transfers on teletext. You'd be lucky if you got one little bit of transfer news a month, let alone several pieces of news a day. And I think that because of that, people think that things are moving slowly. It's nothing to do with Arsenal moving slowly. Arsenal are moving as fast as they move. It's sitting here without any pre-season training having taken place. As I've said before, if Arsenal can complete deals for players before pre-season starts, they have done their business early. It really is as simple as that. As long as those players come in before pre-season starts, then they have done business early in the window. They haven't got the Club World Cup. They don't need to move like Chelsea and Man City do by panicking and paying over the odds of players early in the window just to get them in. They don't have to drop 10 million on players they're going to be signing on a free, like Liverpool have, in order to get their players through the door to play in the Club World Cup. They don't have to do that. So they're going to try and get the best deal possible. They're going to make sure they assess all the options. They're going to be cautious about not missing out on some market opportunities that could arrive at different points in the window. They've already put a lot of work into getting the Martins Zubimendi situation through. Then they've also got to think about that there might be benefits to doing the business in July rather than June because of financial situations. So I know that people get really irritated by the fact that they want to see business done quick or they're not seeing enough links. I've been in this business enough time now. I've done this show for 3 odd years to know how these transfer windows can transpire. Declan Rice arrived after pre-season training had started. Jurriën Timber arrived after pre-season training had started. Kai Havertz arrived for the first game when we played Nuremberg. He arrived only a few days before that. So, and that was a really impressive window that we did our business early because all the players that we signed were able to play on the pre-season tour. That's what we want. So that's all I can tell you. Lynn says, Tom, it won't matter who we get because the fans who want Arteta out will not be happy whoever is signed. And that's probably true. Mark says, Tom, Isak's complaint might be that we bring our signings in at the end of the window and it takes them longer to integrate. And that's why having any anger or irritation about Arsenal not having done their business yet on the 3rd of June is so pointless. So pointless. Don says, Sesko played a different role this year, playing a support role for Openda, and still has good numbers, versatility, which Arteta loves as well. It's a fair point. Anthony says, Tom, he won't give us an immediate impact. He'll be back up to Kaya. I think that's nuts, mate. How on earth can you be so sure that Arsenal, if they spend 80 odd million on a player, won't give Arsenal something from the off? What? Why? How on earth can you be that sure when we've already seen him start week in, week out in the Bundesliga, score against clubs like Juve and Atletico Madrid and Bayern Munich, Borussia Dortmund, all these clubs, but no, he's not going to give Arsenal an immediate impact. I don't understand how you can be so sure about that. That just seems incredible. And I know you are pessimistic, Anthony. Let's be very clear about that. But I just don't get it. I don't quite understand how you can have that viewpoint. Simon says, the thing is, we are unbeaten against top 6 sides this season. We need players that can score against the West Hams and so forth. Sesko or Gyokeres will do that. Our problem is getting a left forward that can beat his man when isolated. Bacon Fang says, yes, but it's always better to have them join in on pre-season so they can bond with the team and learn how it works. Well, that's what I'm saying, mate. And pre-season doesn't start for another 40-odd days. It doesn't start for another 40-odd days. So I don't need 50-odd days, sorry, like close to that. Our first game is more than 50 days away. So I don't really get why people are losing their minds. It's really strange. Ajmal says, I like Kai. What do you think about his future as we're looking for a centre forward? I know we need a backup, but at some point we need to renew his contract. Are we looking at an Ozil Aubameyang salary type player? I don't think so. I think Havertz will play plenty of games. I mean, look at Manchester City, right? Manchester City play with 3 forward players. And yet, if you look at the number of forward options they have that can play in those different positions, you've got Erling Haaland, you've got Omar Marmoush, you've got Jack Grealish, you've got Phil Foden, you've got Oscar Bob, you've got Savinho, you've got Jeremy Doku. So I struggle with this idea that we're going to struggle to have, Havertz and another centre forward as options in this team. Obviously, we're going to be fine having those players. We need that depth. If we have injuries, players come in. If we have other games and we need to rest and rotate, we have players to do that. Tipsy says, we need to realise that negotiations involve both parties agreeing on a price. The selling party will be overvaluing. The buying party will be undervaluing. The aim is to meet closer to your side, and that takes time. Some clubs also may not want to enter discussions with certain players yet. Some clubs may just be turning down the opportunity to have talks with players until later on in the window when July opens and that different financial market approaches. So it's not a video game. It's not just like you put the money on the table, you get the deal done. It's really not as simple as that. Daniel says Bruno Fernandes is staying at Man United according to TalkSport. Good. I sincerely hope so. I did not want them getting around 100 million for Bruno Fernandes. That would have been pretty bad. I mean, there's no guarantees they would have spent it correctly, but I'm glad that he is staying. And Don also says, Tom, season only finished a couple of weeks ago. You would think the season begins on the weekend. I know, mate. Ty says, the truth is we're dealing with clubs whose players have release clauses and Arsenal wants to negotiate paying in instalments to maximise the transfer kitty during this window, and this will take time. It's absolutely right. Transfer release clauses have to be paid up front. If you do pay those things in one chunk, it can limit how much you can spend during individual windows on other players. Arsenal want to bring in the maximum number of players possible. And to do that, you've got to try and get the best deal possible for those players that you want to sign. Serkan says, any striker that comes into our Arteta's system will play back up to Kai purely because they would need time to adjust to our style of play. The press is very specific and needs time to learn properly. Jack says, Tom, I think some people are getting impatient because they see United, City, Liverpool, Chelsea all being linked with loads of players and it seems like they're moving quicker. I think that, it's just psychological, isn't it? Right. It's just a psychological thing that you hear these stories about those players. The reality is, of course, Arsenal, as I said before, had the news about Zubimendi dropped a week ago, the psychological view of Arsenal and how they're moving would be very different, even though they've moved earlier than all of those other clubs to try and secure the best defensive midfield option on the market. Chaz says, Tom, who would you like to see come in as the left winger if we do end up going for body? Barcola, for me, as I point out, would be up there. Adamala Lukman is another one to consider also. So, yeah, that I think is the two that I'm looking at mainly. Nico Williams' injury record does concern me. Nathan says, do you think that we should be in for Delap? He's going to Chelsea, but even then, no, I don't think so. I don't think he's of the required level for me personally to have gone for. MJ says, why are Man United still attracting decent players? Because they're Man United. You have to be humble enough to admit Man United are still the second biggest club in the world. They're just incredibly bad at the moment. Badges matter. History matters. Heritage matters. Players will still sign. Wages also matter. And they are offering players huge wages. They offer players, massive, massive contracts that do convince them. That's why Arsenal lost a couple of their youngsters to Manchester United, because they were able to offer them silly money for the specific kind of age bracket that they're currently in. Wilson says, why do you prefer Sesko over Gyokeres? We've kind of done this to death. In short, he's a better finisher. He's more suited to the way we play, more aerially dominant. He's good in the transition. He's younger. His wages will be less. That's not really a reason to want to play him more, but just from a footballistic point of view, there's loads of reasons. His link-up plays better. I just think that there's a lot of traits about Sesko that I personally prefer and see a higher ceiling in him. I don't think there's much of a difference between the two. But having that younger profile, somebody who's already exceeding in a more difficult league, playing for a club that are restricting him more, and the value that he's giving despite all of those restrictions, as opposed to a player that's playing in the perfect environment, it's already 26, turning 27. I just don't see Gyokeres as the better, smarter signing of the two. And I'd personally go for Sesko. Don says, I personally don't care about United signings. We're shopping in a different bracket to win the league and not simply to improve from 15th to get more than 42 points. And he says, Tom, I have a feeling Sesko and the club are looking for a bidding war. They might wait for the Club World Cup to see if other clubs sign him. It could be possible. It would make sense that Leipzig would want to do that. They would want to attract the most interest as feasibly possible. Wilson says, which left-sided winger should Arsenal sign? I think we covered that. I said Barcola would be my number one pick. D says, I keep hearing that Barcelona want to sign Garcia and send him out on loan. Could we still be able to bring him in on loan, though it's not good business long-term for us? Probably not, no, because Barcelona have a much easier pathway for Garcia. They've got two older goalkeepers, ter Stegen and Szczesny, so it's really easy to see how Garcia would get into that team after just a year, whereas David Raya is at Arsenal for the long term. So, no, I don't think so. Isabel says, any truth in Madrid wanting Miles Lewis-Skelly? I mean, I'm sure that a lot of clubs would love Miles Lewis-Skelly, but I've heard nothing to suggest that his contract talks are going badly, no. Lynn says, after the big headlines yesterday about Spurs being taken over and huge things going on behind the scenes at Newcastle, do you think that maybe both Newcastle and Spurs could have the same owner? No, I don't. That's impossible. You're not allowed to do that. So, no, I don't think so. And Emily says, no chance Barcelona would want it. No chance that Arsenal would be able to offer him something better like that. They'll want him to play every week on loan, like Garcia would, of course, as well. And Lee says, would I take Jared Bowen? I don't think so. I think the boat's kind of gone for Jared Bowen. 28 years of age, big money, isn't offering enough. 28, turning 29, as you would do in December. That Eze is kind of my cutoff in terms of age and investment. Eze is kind of the max age that I would go for. Someone who's 26, turning 27. That's the max I'd kind of age-wise I'd be looking to invest in. 28, turning 29, you're getting at least 2, maybe even 3 less seasons out of them. Don says, Ben Jacobs made an appearance on the Football Terrace and said Sesko already chose us above Chelsea and United last year and told Leipzig he wants to sign. Great. Fantastic. Also says, Servatore, it was actually my previous line of work. I had to get out of the... Oh, what's this? Discussions going on in the chat. Oslo, I'm conscious now what this is. I'm scrolling up now to try and find the conversation. Give us some insight. I need context. So I have no idea what this is about. Daniel says, when Area Mazda and Skelly are on 6K and 4K a week, respectively, I'm sure they'll take the guaranteed life-changing money now instead of gambling on another year when they could get a major injury. I mean, they are going to be offered plenty of money by Arsenal in contract talks. Don't you worry about that. Errol says, I don't understand why everyone is writing off Sesko. I don't think everyone is, but a lot of people are. He's putting up constant numbers in a better league than the Portuguese league as well. Woe says, as Mana Diamande's hype has died down, cheeky bids to back up Saliba. I mean, he was really poor, wasn't he, against Arsenal? We really did absolutely rip him to pieces when we played against them. I think that maybe had an impact on how Arsenal viewed him, but yeah, I don't know. Chino says, Tom, have you seen the video that David Bentley broke into the club's dressing room and Arteta's office? Such a disgrace, considering he's a former Spurs player. Yeah, I think there will be conversations about how that happened. I don't think the club will be particularly pleased about that. Let's put that there. I can almost guarantee they won't be very pleased about that whatsoever. So interesting to know how that did indeed happen. Daniel says, would age profile rule out Matoma? I'd heard that we like the look of him. Yes, we had Ed Aarons on the show the other day from The Guardian, and he did confirm Arsenal is aware have an interest in Matoma. Again, he is a player on the older side of the kind of the age bracket. He is 28, turning 29. He's just turned 28, but still, for me, I think Matoma's a little bit too old for the money that he would cost to bring into the club. Thomas says, if referring to project as a way of implying a player hasn't reached their full potential, then how about Saka? Perhaps we should instead be rephrasing to ceiling, hence Sesko still excites me. Mark says, Lucas Fabianski got released by West Ham. Would you bring him back on a free? Yes, I would. I would sign him to be our third choice goalkeeper behind Karl Hein. I would absolutely be behind the idea of signing Fabianski on a free and bringing him back to the club. Adane says, why aren't we signing players to win now? How much longer before we win it? This age thing is a joke. I mean, tell me, Adane, would you sign Florian Wirtz? Would you sign Barcola? Would you sign Desiree Doué? You know, the whole thing about signing a young player means you're just signing them as a project. It's a load of rubbish. These players make immediate impact. These players make things happen at such a young age. The fact that a player is younger doesn't mean that they aren't being brought in to win now. Believe me. Ruari says, did you say that you think Sesko is better finished than Gyokeres? I was starting to believe you on Sesko, but that is deluded. I mean, it's not really, is it? We've talked about the numbers, mate. The numbers are there. He is a better finisher than Gyokeres. He outperforms his XG better than Gyokeres does. In a tougher league, against better goalkeepers and better defenders, he's a better finisher. The numbers don't lie. The numbers support the argument. The number of goals you score compared to how you outperform the shots that you get. There is one argument that is better to discuss finishing, and that is how you outperform your XG. It's as simple as that. Tyler says, what happens to Baina and Pina at Villarreal, who were linked with us? Both seem to have decent seasons just gone. Just don't seem to be being talked about at the moment. Mark says, burden us with Florian Wirtz, please. Although I favour Sesko and Gyokeres over Gyokeres. I do like Gyokeres ball striking. Yeah, I think both players are excellent ball strikers. You know, it's mad how this kind of world puts this whole idea about one over the other. It's such an Arsenal thing, isn't it? We love division. We love taking sides. We love creating this drama that you have to be on one side of the coin or the other. You know, there's nothing wrong with being on the fence about something. Absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. Ollie says, why is Arteta still twiddling his thumbs on FIFA? I've already re-signed Gyokeres, Neymar and Garnacho. Oh, you're a terrible manager, Ollie. Lynn says, how disgraceful was the abuse Saka got at the F1? Why is it that he picks out how he needs to be stopped, in my humble opinion? We talked about it a lot on yesterday's show. We covered it there. My position remains very much the same. The abuse stems from there's a lot of racism involved. There's a lot of hatred of Arsenal. There's a lot of hatred of Saka involved. It's as simple as that. It shouldn't be lost on anybody. And says, Tom, how has Sesko outperformed Gyokeres' XG? By finishing chances that are harder than him. Are you asking for the specific numbers? Because we have gone over these before by quite a bit. So I think if you go back to one of the shows a couple of days ago, you can find that. I might write a piece on it today just to kind of get the numbers more obviously out there, just so we've got them on record. But he's outperformed his XG by finishing chances that are harder on a more consistent basis. So over the last 2 seasons, when you look at, because obviously they've both been playing for Sporting and Leipzig respectively over the last 2 seasons, over those last 2 seasons combined, Sesko has outperformed outperformed his XG to a larger extent than what Gyokeres has. So it's as simple as Jack says Sesko's non-penalty XG is 2.6 and Gyokeres, I said it's over the last 2 seasons. So the 2 years that they've been at their respective clubs, if you look at the XG outperformance in those across those 2 seasons, because it's always better to get a better approach across 2 than a single season. The more evidence used, the more reliable the results you get are. Alpha Raf says XG is a dubious metric. Not really. It's one of the most used metrics in all of sport. When clubs come to their transfer recruitment, XG is the one that is used for centre forwards above all else. How they outperform their XG, what they're doing against what other players, because it's the greatest comparison tool that we've got in sport. If you speak to recruiters, if you speak to analysts or scouts, they will use XG so much when it comes to looking kind of at approaches. Teams use it as analysis in their own performances. So no, it's one of the most sophisticated and predictively accurate measurements that we have in the sport. So no, it's not a dubious metric at all. And you got Lee. You got a lot of fans are like Lee, who says Sesko 13 goals. Yeah, sick. Like you got a lot of fans like Lee who just kind of look at the surface and see the number of goals that Gyokeres has scored and see the number of goals that Sesko has scored and go, oh, that's a bigger number than that number. That guy must be better. But obviously, we know the context and the larger argument is much, much more than that. Anthony, I'll write a piece on it today for you, for everybody, just to kind of get people's insight into the XG. Don't worry. We'll do a whole big comparison line on Sesko and Gyokeres for you so you can get all the information in one place. Martin says, Anthony, it's about how they scored versus their XG, not about how many chances. Yeah, it's about the non-penalty goals they've scored against their non-penalty XG across the last 2 seasons. That's what you need to be doing. That's not comparing their XG. If you compare their XG, you're not really doing anything. Jay says, I've been back in Sesko for a while. I've been saying that this debate between Gyokeres and Sesko is like a litmus test for people who know ball. Many are failing at identifying the better player. Errol says we should be looking into Yildiz. Would be a solid addition to the bench and forward line. I don't know much about him, to be honest. Mark says, do you credit rumours that we might go in for Garnacho? I wouldn't personally. Doesn't improve us at all. Martin says, can people not see the most Portuguese league is about as strong as the bottom half of the championship? Yilmaz, sorry, Errol, correcting himself. Again, still don't know much about the player. Chino says, if Sesko can outperform the amount of XG we created this season, could do the double and make the Champions League final easily. Paul says, is there any possibility that we sign Sesko and Gyokeres? No, there's not. Amaral Gunner says, Tom, have you heard the Spurs are trying to sign Sane and Buemo, Gyokeres and Garnacho? I mean, everyone's trying to sign a lot of players, but we don't know. Well, not that we don't know, but we just got to weigh out things play out, see how things go, and assess things come the end of the window, of course, as well. Daniel says, Arsenal's transfers often seem to drag on longer compared to other clubs because you're an Arsenal fan. That's the only reason. Arsenal done their business in 23 earlier than anybody else, spent more than we ever have done before. But this myth that Arsenal drag on transfers just kind of goes on. It's very average compared to everybody else in terms of when Arsenal complete their deals. Last season was pretty slow. Season before that, pretty fast. I expect this to be another proactive window. I'd expect signings to be done before pre-season begins. Then that first game comes around in mid to late July. Anyway, thank you so much as always for tuning in. Really appreciate your time. I've got a train to catch. So I'm in the office today, but have an absolutely fantastic day, people. Enjoy yourselves. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.